Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Norel Doan, and I'm the Director of Marketing for Viking Pure Solutions. And today we are very excited to host this panel discussion with Carrie Alberts, James Lee, Adria Thompson, and Nicole Will to talk about their experience visiting the Hogeweyk, and that is the world's first dementia village. And we're really interested to hear about their perspective and feelings from this visit, and just talk more about how the Hogeweyk is reimagining dementia care and maybe some ways that we can bring the aspects of things that are in place in the Dementia Village to communities here in the United States. So without further ado, Nicole, I'd like to introduce you and get this panel discussion started.
Sounds good. Thanks for having all of us. We've been counting down the days for this conversation. So Nicole Will, founder of Will Gather and co-founder of Think Tank, with my business partner, James, who's here with us today.
Yeah, I'm excited to host this, guys. We're back together virtually anyway. I loved our time in Amsterdam. It was really cool to spend some time together, and I couldn't have imagined going through that experience on my own. And I'm really, really glad that the four of us had a chance to do that together. I want to first acknowledge and recognize this is a really cool thing that we kind of pitched. Adria first kind of came up with the idea to go and visit, and then she invited others, and then I was like, oh, I heard about it. Can I tag along? And it morphed into this really beautiful study abroad project. And then we pitched the idea to Dan over at Viking Pure to say, hey, we should team up on this, and they joined us as a sponsor for the Think Tank study group. So thank you guys for that. And then I would, maybe towards the end of our conversation, would love to queue up your reflections on why you chose to partner with us on this and what you got out of it. But let me also introduce our fellow travelers and dementia experts, Carrie Alberts, Adria Thompson. We are going to go over 3 basic structures of our reflections, and Dan and Norel have the auspicious task of trying to look at all of the questions and field them over to us as we go. So the 3 parts that we're going to break out, we want to go over kind of the factual parts about the Hogeweyk. And so Adria will lead us on some of our summary of the facts that we found while we were there. And then each of us will dig into some of our individual reflections of our time there. What's really unique about this foursome is that we all have a different lens that we took to Amsterdam. So we'll share our reflections, and then we hope to end our time with some recommendations. Again, through those lenses that each of us have, what are we going to do with all of this information? So without further ado, let's queue up Adria, and we can start with some of the facts of the Hogeweyk Dementia Village.
Yeah, thanks, James. Hi, I'm Adria Thompson. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I own Be Light Care. And yeah, I had this idea. I've heard about the Hogeweyk many years ago on a viral video, and it's always been in the back of my mind as the mecca of dementia care that I wanted to visit. And so I know many of you might be familiar with peripheral, facts and pieces of information about it. But just quickly, I want to share with you a little bit about some things that maybe I was wrong about going into visiting, and maybe you are too. So just to kind of lay out the setting here, the Hogeweyk is in a small town called Visp, outside in the Netherlands, outside of Amsterdam. And it is a care community for individuals with dementia. It opened in 2009, so it was the first and probably you would say the most well-known dementia village in the world. Inside of this care community, there's 188 residents who live in 27 different homes. And each of these homes are divided into different lifestyles, and so are the residents who live there. So the themes, I remember there's cosmopolitan, traditional. These kind of words basically reflect the way that a person lives their life. So if you have a new resident come in, they do a lot of assessments, talk to them and their family and determine, are they someone who's always lived on a farm out in rural parts of town? Or are they someone who goes out on the town all the time that likes to be in the middle of things? So once they determine kind of which place a person would fall into, they are put into a home that reflects that design. And they're amongst people who share those same kinds of feelings and that same kind of lifestyle so that they can more easily build connections with each other, which I think is really cool. In this village, so there are 27 homes, but there is also a grocery store, a theater, a hair salon, a physical therapy office, a maintenance office. There's a restaurant, which we ate at, and it was delicious. And there are other spaces, but those are the ones that really kind of stood out to me. As far as the staff who work there, I'd say that they're like generalists. So there are definitely people who have roles, but everyone is responsible for the well-being of the residents who live there. And regardless of what your role on paper is, they're all there for support. But there are 2 people at all times in each home caring for the residents there. The thing that I was most wrong about is the type of care community it is. So I assumed that it was an assisted living kind of model, which I think we all kind of did. Yeah, Carrie. So those of you who might be watching are probably familiar, but if you're not, there's 3 main levels of care. There's independent living, which is where people are mostly independent, assisted living, where people need assistance with some things, and then there's skilled nursing facilities, which is a traditional nursing home where the highest level of care and support is provided. And that's what the Hogeweyk is. It is a full-blown skilled nursing facility. And what's interesting is in the United States, anyone can go to a nursing home and private pay but in the Netherlands, because they pay taxes and pay into the system where the government pays for their care once they get to that spot, it requires assessments from people representing the government to determine if you're eligible. So every single person who lives in the Hogeweyk has been assessed and determined eligible for skilled nursing level care. So the residents who live there have moderate to moderately severe to severe dementia. They have complex medical needs and high levels of need for support and supervision. So these are not people with mild dementia that are living independently. They are more progressed than I thought. I think those are kind of the big facts that I know I needed to learn and know about. We can kind of get into the specifics of the restaurants and the grocery store and those kind of things, but they're all real establishments, right? Like the grocery store has bread and milk and jelly and needles and incontinence products and alcohol on the shelves for people to purchase, and people with dementia and the people who are working inside these homes shop there for all their needs for the week. Okay.
Hey, Adrian.
We had one quick question from Chelsea that I think is relevant here. Are most of the residents from the Netherlands, or is there an international presence of residents?
Yeah. So they are all from the Netherlands. Now, we met people who I grew up in the United States, right? But these are largely going to be residents of the Netherlands because this is a government-funded community. So you all can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, that was my impression too.
Yeah. I also wanted to touch on, the structure of there are 23 houses and 6 to 7 residents reside within each house. And each house, like Adria was saying, was broken down into lifestyle, which I think historically we've done, based on cognition or level of care. So that was super interesting to learn about. And then total, right, there's about, I think she said 180 residents that live there at any given time. And with the staff and with having it be everyone involved, they talked a lot about having formal and informal networks of care support. So that formal care support is, right, the staff that are paid to be there. Informally, they had such a dynamic, robust volunteer program and system that they were incredibly intentional about. There also was not any uniforms. We're talking about facts, no name tags. You did not know walking around who played what role. Was it a resident? Was it not a resident? Right? It was just a community and an environment and a village. And I just thought that it made for an environment that I think we all felt really comfortable being in, and just a part of life, right? We're part of the town that was there.
I think the size is also something that I didn't quite understand. So you hear Dementia Village and it's like, is this its own town? Like it's not that large. A couple of blocks, I would say that it takes up, but it is in the footprint of what a traditional nursing home was in the 90s. So this is not huge, but then once you're inside of it and you're walking, I mean, there's outside areas. I think don't need to assume that that. You're walking in a town square and there's, the buildings look like what they are. It looks like a theater. But it felt a little bit larger than what I know it to be, because there's so many places to explore. There's like a lot of nooks and
a lot of places to walk around. And with the structure of that, they operate under these 3 guiding principles of oh my gosh, I can't even say the word. Help me.
Deinstitutionalize.
There we go. Thank you. And transforming care and normalizing it. And so that's their guiding principle. And then within that, they have these 7 pillars that they use as their framework of how they provide care. So is that a favorable surrounding, the lifestyle, looking at health, I love how they use this word, life's pleasures and meaning. We talk a lot about engagement and enrichment, but it's really some of those simple pleasures that make life so rich. Those formal and informal networks, and then the social inclusion and emancipation, really looking at the freedom that provides, and then how do we organize and have this purpose-driven leadership that's present. So, setting the stage for facts and kind of what their model is. It was really, really interesting to learn about how they set up their foundation for the care moving forward.
Yeah. I think it's a good time for us to jump into some reflections here. I'm sure a lot of the facts will come through Q&A and questions and conversation. And I want to cue Carrie up first so that we can introduce her officially and get her reflections. But before I do, Dan, did you have a question earlier? You were wanting to say something?
I'm just keeping my pulse on, obviously this super interactive audience that we have today. And I just want to make sure that we get to some of these questions, and you are. So as I kind of see them pop up, cool. I'm just going to try to politely, interject myself, or Narelle as well. And just make sure that we make this time as productive as, for all these people who have taken time out of their day to join us today. So
we have a couple
but anyway, on to Carrie, please. Much more important to introduce her.
No. Well, thank you guys. I know I'm being quiet for once. That's unlike me. But Carrie Alberts, aka Dementia Darling, truly an honor, as Adria said it. This, as a dementia nerd, I've been following them for my whole career. So this was like the Disney World for me. Like, this was everything, going to this and seeing this for real. What is this about? And I didn't truly understand what a social model versus a medical model was until stepping into Hogeweyk, I believe. And I don't want to take this away from my fellow members here, because I think we all felt it very deeply. And of course, some of us had tears, but how real. It wasn't a facade. It wasn't, we kept saying, and we'll touch on this, but everything was real. As we said, the grocery store, it wasn't, we're going to, make this facade of we're going to feel autonomous and we're going to feel like we're at a grocery store. No, we're at a grocery store. We're at a restaurant. This is an actual restaurant anyone from the community can come to and have a meal. It is not just for this village, and it was so just overwhelmingly amazing to see how it can be done. You can live this in this world. And it gives me a lot of hope. So that was the main thing for me that I'm still trying to sink in, was just, it's real life. It's real. It's not a facade. None of this was a facade.
Yeah. I wanted to chime in a little bit about my perspective and the lens that I took with me to the Hogeweyk. And so as an owner operator in the world of dementia care, where we are trying to do our own versions of these innovative things, and I'm sure in the audience we have people who are in the senior living operations part of dementia care, and I'd love to prompt some of those questions of things that you notice internally within your own organization or within our field that you're like, let's talk about this, and let's examine if there's a different way to do it. But the lens I had was as a business owner, as an operator, learning about how did it all get started, what makes it kind of unique, and how do we ultimately bring this back to the US and to the people that we're supporting. So first I want to start off with how much I didn't realize the things that we do at Bella Groves is informed by the things that they started at the Hogeweyk. I learned about it pretty early on. I remember as an activities director, so this would have been in 2009, 2010, right when they were first getting started. I remember hearing the first parts about the Dementia Village, and then I think CNN did a story about them, and that's when it really kind of took to kind of the world stage. And just realizing how much the importance of sharing information is. I think as a very capitalistic society, we can get caught up in intellectual property and trade secrets and better and different. And we have a phrase in our profession that we say a lot, a rising tide lifts all ships, lifts all boats. But if we really look at are we doing that? I think we need to share more of what we're doing. We need to share more of our hypothesis. We need to share more of our findings. And I want to credit Iris, our host from the Hogeweyk, and Be Advice is the official name of the organization, which is kind of a spin-off, I think, of the Hogeweyk. And their mission, as far as I can gather, is that they want to help other organizations to create their own versions of innovation. And that really struck me, that they weren't trying to copy and paste the Hogeweyk into other places. They want to advise and help people with whatever your vision of a better world is for people living with dementia and their caregivers. But I think that they did an excellent job of representing how far they go with that, of like, here's the blueprint, here's everything that we do. And Iris was such a wonderful host, and we gathered a lot of I think her heart and her own story and her own vision of this place. So I'll pause there, otherwise I'll take the remainder of our time. But it was so impactful. There's so much I want to say here.
Well, and I think it's important to say at this point, before we get into more details, that Iris and the Hogeweyk themselves would never claim to be the answer for dementia care.
Mm-hmm.
Like, much like you said, they are willing to share and give advice and talk about like what they've learned and help you kind of translate that into your own backyard. Mm-hmm. But they know that the model that they created in 2009 is not going to be the answer for dementia care forever. I think it was really innovative, super brave at the time, and still shows so much inspiration, I think, personally. But it's not, no one's claiming that this is the answer. I think going into the Hogeweyk, like if I think about my reflections, my questions, and if I look back at the things that I wrote down that I wanted to learn, it was all about, but what do you do when, or what do you do if? I felt so like, I now see how like in the box I perceived this, I was thinking, what do you do when someone falls?
Yeah.
There's so much risk. How do you find people? Aren't they wandering all over the place? Like, how do you deal with families who get upset when, you know, their person can't be found when they come to visit? Because I have these experiences in working in care communities for the last 10 years, and I'm just like, I think about the worst case scenario and all the risks. I think risk is a word that came up so much for us. And I was disappointed in myself when I was there that all those limitations came up for me so much. And when I started discovering that like the people who lived there were moderately and severely like progressed in their dementia, and it was apparent, guys, like when you are talking with these residents, like not only do sometimes they're speaking a different language, but even in Dutch, they didn't make sense, right? Like, and physically you could tell they were progressed. And I was disappointed in myself as a dementia advocate. Like, this is what I do, that I was focusing so much on what if they fall? Like, what if they get lost? And it was during a shift probably in the grocery store where I was like, but what if they have a lot of fun here? Like, what if they have independence? What if this is so, like, the moment that they're living in is full of joy?
Yeah.
What if they fall? Sure, that needs to be considered. But what if this life that they're living is so worth it to them? And I think that's the feeling that I take away. And that's like changing my rehabilitation speech therapy mindset of mitigating risk and, you know, all this structure to think like maybe life is about a little more than that.
I agree. Sorry, James, I was just going to say it pushed all of our thinking, I think. I think we all realized that day we had this vision and we've all needed to change how we look at things. And it's exciting. Like, I'm excited for this new way of thinking, and we're excited to share this with you so you can have that as well.
Yeah, I bet we all had a similar image pop up, which Nicole points us back to often, and it's this chart. And I might get it a little bit off, but basically, it's the way that most people perceive dementia care to be. Like, let's stave off decline as much as possible. And so, like, you have a quality of life on one axis, and then you have age on the other axis. And the general premise that people have is, as you age and you get closer to dying, that your quality of life slowly just degrades over time in a pretty linear fashion, right? So it starts here and it gradually just gets lower and lower and lower. And to speak to one of the questions in the chat group about, can you speak to something that was innovative there? I really think that all innovation starts with an idea of what do you believe? And this graph did a really good job of the visualization of what they believe. So instead of this gradual linear decline in quality of life over age, there's this keep the quality of life high as high as possible for as long as possible, and then you might have that steep decline there in the very end of life. They shared a statistic that I can't quite remember the specifics of it, but Iris talked about the average length of time that somebody is in the active stage of dying is pretty brief. Do you guys remember that? Like, was there a specific length of time that they prescribed to it?
I'm gonna see.
I want to say 4 days.
That's what was in my head. It was 4 days.
It was, yeah.
My natural question was like, well, how do you measure that? But let's assume they know how they're measuring all of that. And if you think about 4 days, and the rest of the time, they're not trying to prolong life for as long as possible. They're saying whatever that lifespan is, keep it high as long as you possibly can, and then give them some dignity there in those final days. And I think that permeated everything, in terms of staffing ratio, or what do you wear, or where do people go during the day. All of that comes from the first innovation, which is let's think about life and death this way instead of the other way.
Oh, I felt like such a Debbie Downer because at the end of the day, we were like talking about the things that stuck with us, and like we were talking about quality of life and home life, and they can tell you, I kept saying, I keep thinking about death.
Death.
I was like, I don't know why that came up for me so much. I mean, I guess I kind of do, but it's that aspect of like in what I've been taught, like medically as a medical professional and what I've been doing in senior care, death is the worst case. That is like the thing you're preventing for so long. And there it was just like they talked about life, like life and living. And someone asked in the comments, like, was it apparent that people were happy, like the residents were happy? Yeah. I mean, they were just wandering around. Like there was a lady who just was walking the whole day, and every time we passed her, it was like it was the first time she saw us, and it was like, oh, hi. And people were introducing us to their village, and like I got so many like hand kisses, and Carrie almost got whisked away by a resident.
They should get real kisses.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, no, it was, and someone just asked, what did you notice that like contributed to that higher quality of life? And it really is that freedom aspect of like, you know, there wasn't someone saying, don't go by there, don't go by that door. You know, it was just so you were living, you weren't, you know, you didn't feel confined. And with the community being involved, I feel like, and families coming in and people going to the restaurant, you're getting that vibe of just life being lived around you. And like I loved how every day whoever the caregiver was, they'd take their grocery cart and they'd go with some of their residents and pick out the meal for the day. I love that not every home has the same meals. They make their own meals for what works for them. So one home might not like certain things, and it was just so cool to see the true individuality and life that is lived there. And it wasn't this, okay, we're all going to eat the same thing, we're all going to do the same activities and be a part of the same club. It was that true life being fulfilled there.
Yeah, there was such a feeling of joy. I remember walking around and there's music playing. It's like a bustling environment that naturally led itself to engagement and conversation and going about daily life. And I remember Iris was talking about, previously before they did construction and built what they have now, there was a lot of stress levels for the residents because they didn't know what to do with their time. They didn't have natural ways to engage like we all have done our whole life. And so they've created opportunities and environments the intention is, what do I normally do every day that is a part of the fabric of my life? Going to the grocery store, making a meal, going to a coffee shop and visiting with my friends. And because of how they structure that, the byproduct of that is natural purpose and joy.
Yeah. And Iris said a lot, the days often end with the, city center area being, the town center being just bustling with all generations, people come visit their loved ones, and it's such a community feel, and it just feels so natural, and no one's like being left out because of where they are in their progression. It is just, we're all living together.
Yeah, and Nicole, you spoke about clubs. I think that's one thing we didn't talk about in the facts section, which is although we might be used to a traditional like activity director, and there's certain activities for the day. Here, my understanding is they have clubs that you can join. And so the clubs, there might be a music club or a poetry club or an art club, a cooking club. They have a lot. I mean,
35 different clubs.
They have 35 different clubs. And upon like coming to this community, you choose what club you want to be in, and you can be in multiple. I think there's a cost associated with that, but you are, once again, another opportunity to connect with others of similar like-minded abilities. And it's for anyone at any cognitive stage that can be in these clubs. And so it's not like, okay, like here's an activity, this is what everyone is doing today. It's you choose. And that's where a lot of those volunteers come. And I think that's really unique. I liked that a lot.
And it goes down to their founding principle, which is prioritizing freedom and choice. And when you've got not just one activity you can attend that day because it's on the calendar at 2:00, but you've got 35 clubs that you can choose from based on your interests. That just reiterates that whole, foundation of what that mission is.
It was one of the things for me in operating a dementia care community, the idea of clubs and interests, and it was a huge takeaway for me in how people there at the Hogeweyk are grouped together based on life interest. And again, that you could see the evidence of that throughout. And I do believe it's something that's going to change the way that we approach certain things that we do. It really surprised me that they charged people for clubs. But then it made sense, like the way that she explained it as well. If you join a gym, you're going to expect a fee for that. If you join a woodworking, like us in our own normal life, we don't get to just go wherever we want and do whatever we want.
Yeah.
But the idea of that it must be curated by a community of like the non official, right, help and employees of the Hogeweyk. So conceptually, this is a lot of stuff that will change how we approach, I think, the network of people at Bella Grove serving its own community.
Yeah. And with the lifestyles, it wasn't just, oh, you're with people with their lifestyle and that's it. It was so comprehensive in terms of the decor of the home. Yeah. They were so, oh my gosh, like true to what that lifestyle was, whether it was cosmopolitan, whether it was traditional and formal, everything reflected that, because if you've grown up your whole life and you lived in an urban environment, you want your environment to be able to reflect that. That's where you're going to feel comfortable. That's how you're going to feel at peace. And so even the food preferences, she was saying, based on lifestyle. So it wasn't just, it's nice we all have the same interest and lifestyle. It was like in every aspect of how you lived, and then the care provided went back to that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Nicole, can you speak to the word normal? And because I think you have articulated that well, and when we've talked about this in the past.
Yes, we found, myself specifically, that I would walk around and I kept saying, it's like a normal environment, or it's home-like, or look, they have a deck like we would have a deck, or oh, it's like a real grocery store. And I had to really be intentional, and like just it was my language that I had always been taught and what I had known, because I think we've experienced so many environments where it's the facade of that and not, it is a real grocery store. It is a deck off their house. And so really also looking at, I think, the inherent risk, and that was the other, I think, thing that we noticed so much was just there's cobblestone on the road, and there is the village is actually 2 stories. So there is a main level, and then there's a second level with like a walkway with a little railing. And we're looking around being like, this would never happen in the US in terms of this, right? The risk present.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what we had talked about was, but that is how we live life in our everyday, going about what we're doing. And that these challenges and natural challenges that our brain has to think through actually helps us maintain these skills, right? You're talking about quality for, a long period of time. But it was also, I think, Iris explained so clearly, they really set the expectations with families prior, that this is the inherent risk that we know is a part of life, right? Having all of the medical supplies freely accessible in the grocery store, and it's not behind a closed maintenance closet that only certain people can access and then transport, right? It was how we would go about our day normally, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I agree, Nicole, too, like with seeing the incontinence care products in the, grocery store, like it's just part of life. It's, you go to the grocery store and you buy those things, and it's not hidden away, like you were kind of saying with the maintenance, I think is so important. And someone just asked Cara about the observations and how, how can, it's wonderful, but how can we bring it here? And I think it upset me to think, they've been around for 15 years. Why don't we have more? But I think it really is, starting these conversations and keeping up with them. This will not be the last of our conversation, that's for sure. I mean, I want to push kind of the envelope. How can we change our thinking? I think that's the first thing, because that's what happened for all of us. And how can we change our thinking here in the US to just do these, little things? The Hogeweyk didn't happen overnight. They worked really hard, and they did little things in their basement, where they first in their big, medical building had a grocery store in the basement, and that's what started. And you just go little by little. But I think, we don't have any more time to waste. Let's go. Let's see what we can do to change, even if it is these little just moves towards a social model of real life. And, that thought of, here we're, or as a dementia, expert, whatever you say, you need familiarity. You need to make sure it looks like home, but we take people out of their homes and put them in a medical model setting. That doesn't make sense. So why are we doing this way? How can we change this?
Yeah. And to your point with that, they started this model before they have the structure that they have now. It was done with intentionality in how they viewed care and autonomy and freedom and choice, because we all know we can't all have new construction to have these, Dementia Village settings. But what are the ways that we can do that? I know we're going to get into that. But there was just an interesting thought process about how do we adapt? And it really came from the mindset. And so there's also, in terms of, there was not any really age tech present or technology that helped them provide this model of care that's new and evolved, right? So I think that we limit ourselves based on what we know to be true, but yet we're able to do what we can do with what we have now. For sure.
And you, it looks like you had a question or a comment.
Can you tell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like kind of throwing. I just was curious, because you each serve in such a unique facet as caregivers, here in this country, and these observations. I mean, this place sounds like an oasis almost, I guess my question is kind of like twofold. One, like, what do you think we're focusing too much on here in the United States? That may take away from the value that you're kind of sharing now, that perceivably exists, 3,000 or 4,000 miles from here. And then, things here that we think that are really important, like staff to resident ratio, right? And ensuring certain levels of care and safety. How does that compare? Like, what do you think their, average staff to resident ratio is there? Is that something, an important metric that they, that they try to quantify, on the front end, to kind of justify living there? And just if your thoughts on that, maybe some of the things that we're focusing, maybe too much on, or what are the things that you think that we do really well here in the United States compared to, to what you saw there? And is there opportunity for Hogeweyk to actually be better, right, based on what we do?
Yeah. There's like 4 questions I want to answer.
Sorry.
I'll go with one, and then bounce it to the rest of the group. I think a really practical thing at the end of all of this, we have to determine, okay, great. I hope that this experience wasn't just the 4 of us got to go see something cool. The intention of all of this is, so what? Like, what do we do with all of this now? And I love the theme of the questions coming up is, okay, what do we do with all of that? And it is a big part of our conversations behind the scenes. I'll answer for myself, incorporating Dan's questions into it. By far and away, Carrie mentioned this in her response in the chat group, risk. I think we focus entirely too much on risk, and you can call that different things. You can call it medical care, healthcare, but when we were talking in preparation for this, I reflected that, we don't create safety, we trade for safety. We give things away in order to have more safety. And the thing that we give away is agency, autonomy, choice. We do that in our normal lives. If we want to speed and get somewhere as fast as possible, Well, that's agency and autonomy that you can do that. But we all trade a little bit of that agency by having speed limits, right? Or a seatbelt. We give away safety, or we give away autonomy and agency in replace for safety. And there's a certain level that is acceptable to each of us. Some people won't eat raw fish. Other people are like, I will take it straight out of the ocean. People living with dementia, for the most part, I believe here in the US, we decide that ratio for them, for the most part. We decide, okay, your safety takes precedent over agency. We don't say it that way, but that in effect is, I think, what we're doing. There's somebody in the audience here who is living with dementia, early onset dementia, so I would love to hear more from her. I think it's Lori, maybe. I'd love to hear more from her. And that's part of my response here, is that we have to stop creating things for people living with dementia here in the US, and we have to involve people that it directly impacts. We have to ask their families, we have to ask our communities. And one of the things that I think Bella Grows is trying to do, we are in a small community. We are in a place called Bulverde, Texas, out on the outskirts of San Antonio. There's about 6,000 people who live here. We necessarily depend on a social contract, meaning everybody who has a stake in the outcomes here, in the positivity of life and joy for people living with dementia, but also all of their caregivers. Dementia is so unique in that it affects everybody that it touches, not just the person living with dementia. And I think our model here with Bella Grows is trying to get to that a little bit more, of listen to the people who are living with this and then create a business that serves that. And I think for the most part, senior living did it backwards. We created real estate, we created amenities, we created services, activities, positions, everything. And we said, this is what we think people living with dementia should have, and then let's go sell it to people. I think risk trade-offs, those are the things that we can focus on better.
I don't want to speak for Lori, but she's my friend that I hiked on the Camino de Santiago with. And so we've had conversations about the Hogeweyk. And so, Lori, I want to represent your thoughts on this from our conversations. She loves the model of the Hogeweyk. And it's funny because she was telling another gentleman on the walk with us who's living with dementia that I was going there. And he said, well, my friends and I that have dementia, we don't want to live in a community like that. We want to live in our own homes. And Laurie said, don't talk for me. I want to live in the Hogeweyk. So I think that was a great example of even when we talk about what do individuals with dementia want, well, they can want different things. And I think that having a place like the Hogeweyk it's a tool, it's a resource, it's an option. And if there's always going to be the need for traditional nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities, I think, that intense, especially the rehabilitation side of it, inpatient rehabilitation for people who want to go there, get 3 hours of therapy and be able to rehab home or live in a nursing home for the rest of their life. There should be options for all of that. What we're lacking in the United States is what we have been lacking in the United States, the option of a model similar to the Hogeweyk. Although in the last 10 years, there's certainly been a lot of places that are being very innovative in this space and are reimagining dementia care, which is really exciting.
Awesome. Hey, question for you guys that kind of relates into what Adria just said from Karen. How does this type of setting compare to home care, and does the social independence outweigh the comfort of being home where there's more isolation as the disease progresses?
Yeah, and as Adria just stated, it's so different for everyone. If you're a very introverted person, you might hate being in a village setting, and that's okay. But I think that we know, as being in this world, we know that isolation is detrimental, and it can really speed up that process for a lot of people. So that's why I think it's so important to have these communities that are set up to support them and to make sure that they're still part of their life as much as possible with other people.
Right.
And they have choice within the home, within the village. They could be in their home, right? They don't have to enter into the community and participate and engage. So I think that there's autonomy in that as well. You know, in terms of addressing the differences, because of the staffing model is different to some extent. I do believe, and I'm trying to find the right words for this, but how we have our staffing model here in the US is we're typically, I won't speak for every organization, but caught up on title and position and seniority and all of that. And it felt at the village that really wasn't entering into the equation, that everyone was participating in the care and the well-being of the residents there. And it wasn't about, well, I only do you know, my role and I'm not going to be engaged in anything else. And so I don't know if that's a piece of it, is just the mindset around, you know, the care support, right? Not having a name tag, it doesn't say that you're a director or an administrator or an RN. So I don't know right or wrong. It was an interesting observation that removed that almost like ego for the roles that we have here that we can tend to slide into.
I have some reflections on what I think the Hogeweyk could be doing differently, maybe. You know, and this is not well, it is somewhat specific to them. But one of the reflections I had, being a founding leader of a place like Bella Groves and the things that we're trying to do, you know, I think, and I believe this is something that you can see on the website when you go to Be Advice, and you can see what the founders of the Hogeweyk and the people who work for that arm of the organization are doing. You know, I believe they're 2.0. It's because the central question is, what do you do now? Now that you've launched this innovative model, is it still innovative? We didn't get to ask that question, but I would have really loved to have asked that question to the founders. Do you still consider this to be innovative? And, you know, what they're trying to do as a result of all of that. I think that, you know, and this is my personal opinion, I don't know that they planned for success, meaning there's no way they could have known this was going to be world famous, and that people were going to want to go visit there from all over the world. And so now they're kind of patching it on. So I think one of the practical recommendations I have for people is, you know, plan for your big, hairy, audacious goal, moonshot goals, but also prepare as if you're going to reach them. So what are you going to do if, you know, this model takes hold? How will you replicate it? How will you change it? And for me, I realized the importance of sharing the vision and getting other people involved in creating that vision early on. I think there's a potential danger that if the founding members hold the vision tightly, and if they ever evolve to, you know, move and focus on other things, someday I won't be the day-to-day CEO of Bella Groves. So I have to plan for that now. I have to have other people build programs, try things, experiment. I have to fund and support other people within the organization to take risks. And it's not just on me, because this idea, this concept has to live and expand beyond my day-to-day participation. So I'd be interested to talk to the founders and see what their thoughts are, reflecting back. But there was one specific thing, I don't know why it kind of stuck out to me, but it was the activity cabinet drawer. So we were walking around, and by the way, I just have to say this before we run out of time. It was really cool to see my fellow travelers here engage with the residents at the Hogeweyk, because, I mean, except for one resident who did speak English, everybody else spoke Dutch or a different language. And it was like that didn't matter. And it was really cool to see them interact. And it's kind of like love and joy is such a universal language. So I thought that was really cool. I made myself lose my own train of thought with that little
activity closet.
Yeah, activity closet, right? Activity closet. The reason it stuck out to me was we were walking around and we were in this space, and I could tell Iris was like, "Oh man, that activity closet," and I didn't think much of it. But what it represented was that the day-to-day managers of the Hogeweyk, or whoever made the decision, the thing that they focus on, which makes the Hogeweyk who they are is reality. Everything is reality. It's here for practical purpose. And the storage cabinet closet probably wouldn't exist in somebody's home. And so like it became a very practical, like the activities directors or caregivers, like they use it for easy to reach. This is where we're putting all of our activity stuff. But would it exist there without the caregivers? Would the people living in that space want that there? And it struck me of why did this matter to Iris so much? But it's the small like cracks, right? It's the small cracks of how a vision can change over time. And the only conclusion I could come up with was there weren't enough people in the beginning who created the vision who are staying on and driving that vision now.
Yeah.
But, and I also just wanted to say too, like I went into it thinking, oh my gosh, they must have a waiting list to work there. And like everyone must be freaking out because I know I would there. And they were like, oh, people like don't even know we exist.
Yeah,
like,
locally.
in the Netherlands, like their own country.
Yeah.
And yeah, inside, I'm saying like outside their country, they're like, we're famous, but in the Netherlands, people are like, what? And they were like, we don't have people knocking on the door to work here necessarily. Like, so there's still those struggles. So I just wanted to say that in the sense that it's not this like end all be all perfection. We're still dealing with these same issues in other aspects as well of, you know, getting the right care staff and finding them and the trainings. And so there's still that behind the scenes that was actually shocking to me because I thought it would have been like everyone wants to work here.
Right. A lot of commonalities with staffing challenges like we all see, right, and experience. So it was interesting.
Some questions from the audience that relate to that. First of all, is the Hogeweyk the only dementia village in the Netherlands like this? Or is it, are there other villages like in Europe, not in the Netherlands? Do you guys know of?
There, I believe, is one in France.
There's one in England. I don't know, not necessarily ones that have like done, you know, be advice or using that, but they're doing their own things. And I know I was reached out to, I know Adria was by other people doing programs in the Netherlands. And now I want to go back and see what other things are happening because there's definitely a lot of different programs, I think, coming out of this type of view for sure in Europe.
When I think about answering that question, I just come back to like, what is Dementia Village, right? Like it is just, and it's, you know, we use the word innovative a lot, but I mean, it's a different type of care. And so what type of care community that is trying to do things differently falls within that Dementia Village scope to where we could say, oh yeah, here's one here. Are there people all over the world thinking about dementia care differently? Yes. That's, I think, the best answer we can give. Yeah. And I think that's it's only going to be more. And I think that's exciting.
Right.
I'm clearly biased in this perspective, but one of the things that I found really encouraging and remarkable was while we were there, Iris had a lot of questions for me about Bella Groves. And I could see it in her eyes and the reflections that she had of like, oh, that's a really good idea. And so to tag on to what Adria is talking about, the Dementia Village Hogeweyk is not one thing. I really do believe that one of my biggest takeaways was the spirit of the founding vision, how you bring people onto it and share that information and let other people in on this research of what are alternatives to dementia care, and then let them build it. You don't have to copy and paste. And I think particularly in dementia care, we shouldn't copy and paste. We all say, like everyone here will talk about, everyone in this audience would agree to, everybody living with dementia has a unique and different experience living with dementia. Well, there should be solutions that are reflective of that difference. And so the more that we share, the more that we can do. And the last thing I'll say is there were a lot of questions relating to this. We just have to get started. I think we can overwhelm ourselves with how do we fund this? How do we create this? We all need to challenge our own thinking. If you're an operator in senior living, have questions, show this video to your team and have a tough conversation about what are we doing correctly and what should we rethink. I don't think that the Hogeweyk is what it is because of its physical footprint. I think you could take that same group of people, put them in a nursing home down the street, and they would still figure out ways to be the Hogeweyk. And so our industry needs to have tough conversations internally and reflect about why do we do things the way that we do, and start with that change.
And I think to take that one step further is like, it doesn't just, this isn't a question just for operators and owners, right? This is a question for anyone who has any role in senior care. As a speech therapist, how will I practice differently with these kind of concepts? How can I rethink how to provide support, do my job within my scope? Really focusing on a person with dementia's quality of life. I think if we all start making those little changes, we're going to see a big change. But I can't agree more with all the things that we've said within this webinar, that it requires a bigger concept change before you ever put down the first dollar for any kind of facility or building or structure.
Yeah.
There are caregivers have to be comfortable with the fact that there are risks for the person that they love. People with dementia have to advocate for places like this for themselves. Yeah. Those of us without dementia, I was thinking, I have a friend who was trying to figure out my Enneagram, and I hate those kind of things. But she said, "What's your biggest fear?" And maybe I can figure it out that way. And without hesitation, I said, being controlled. I hate people tracking me. I hate people telling me what to do. Like, I don't know why, but that just like drives me crazy. And then it made me think about, like, what if I have dementia one day and someone says, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" Sit down, Adria. Oh my gosh. Like, I want to, if and when I ever get dementia, I want to live in a world where that doesn't happen. And in the Hogeweyk, that doesn't happen. So how do we get there?
Right.
That's my thought.
Love it. Love it.
Okay, who's going to try to wrap this up?
Well, why don't I try to
yeah, please.
Just on behalf of the obviously the team at Viking Pure. I mean, we are just so honored to be a part of this mission, to be a part of this change. I think Helen said it perfectly in the chat. Innovation comes from challenges, and to see just the conversation here as the tip of this spear of change in reimagining dementia care. I know from Norel and I's perspective and the rest of the Vikings, if you will, we're just so thankful to be associated with a group that's so committed to change, to bringing this improvement back to the United States. I think we all want to serve and care, for our fellow humans as best as we can, especially as we age. And it's just been an honor to sit and learn and to see this experience come to life, and having so many people join us today as well, who are also equally committed to this change. It's going to be really awesome to see what comes out of this, and I'm excited for future conversations and then some follow-up, and maybe even some potential case examples from those out there who have incorporated some of these practices. We're excited for you, and very thankful for all of you. So
we appreciate that, Dan. Today. I did want to note for people that the four of us, as part of our small group, we are going to continue our work together. So this was part of the think tank small group experience. So the four of us still have homework to do. And so our goal is to put all of this together into practical recommendations or something that can live on beyond this hour-long conversation. So we're all getting together in person in Austin this December, and then whatever deliverable we come up with, we will share that freely and publicly as well. So this is not the end of this project.
Awesome. One thing, James and Nicole, we did not have a chance to get to all of the questions that were asked, and there were a few great nuggets. I know Carrie and Adria and everyone, thank you very much for your help with answering the questions in the chat while we were going. But is there an email address or somewhere where folks can send additional questions that they have in follow-up today?
Yeah. What would be the best way to do that? I don't know that I could respond to all the emails through personal email.
Do we want to answer a few now? I don't know what timeline is like, but
yeah, but if we have
or we could reconvene. I don't know.
we may need to have a round two.
Just answering questions. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, if it serves any purpose for group and follow up, info@vikingpure.com, I believe, is more than acceptable from our perspective. We'd be happy to parlay those questions to the group here to make sure that you get the answers that you're obviously looking for. So if that's helpful,
we can do that. If you guys will summarize all the questions for us, and the four of us can Google Doc it and send 100%. Some responses, and you guys can post it.
Great. Yep. Let's do it. All right. Thank you all so much. It's been such a pleasure as Viking Pure to host this discussion, and we look forward to seeing what comes from this visit and more conversations like this. It's been a real pleasure.
Awesome.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Everyone.